You said your father was freebasing.
Yes, and he was also a police officer.
Oh, okay. So when you seen your father using drugs, was that something normal to you? Did you think that, oh my dad is using drugs, like this is a bad thing, or did you even know what drugs was during that time? And how old were you too?
So it's crazy because I talked about this in my book. I really didn't even know until me and some kids in the neighborhood was going back and forth, kind of roasting each other. And it's like my pops used to always be in, God rest her soul, in Pam's crib, and she used to be trapping out the spot. And it's like on Magnolia, it was like a building. That whole joint was booming. And my cousin Nate, God rest his soul, who was one of the leaders in Interville, lived next door. But the building was booming. You had the Dominicans, you had Gilbert and all of the homies. Like I can kind of say these things because the time of limitations have passed. And, Pam lived on the first floor and she was trapping. And I used to always be like, damn, my pops always, I'd catch him coming out of there, but I didn't quite know what he was doing. Until one day, me and the kids were going back and forth and we was talking, kicking shit, talking, shit towards one another. And I was nice at jokes because Earl, who was a kid in the neighborhood, he used to roast us like he would go in on us. And so I started being able to be like, real quick on my toes with the jokes because like every time I came out, it was an episode. And so I was going in on these kids from Magnolia. And that was when one of the kids, Marcel was like, nigga, that's why your father's a crackhead. And it was like, I was instantly, everybody like started laughing. And it was like crazy because at first I'm like, no, the fuck he ain't. Your mother's a crackhead. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, tell him, daddy, who wound up with being my cousin later. He confirmed it. He was like, yeah, your father's a crackhead. And bro, I just started beating the shit out these kids, like because I felt hurt. I felt like, they knew something that I didn't know at that time. You know what I'm saying?
You definitely described that in your book, which I read.
Right.
So how did that make you feel as far as, all right, niggas is popping shit, they calling your dad a crackhead, which you thought was a joke during that time. So do you go home and you confront Pops, or what do you do at that point?
Well, like I said, my pops was a police officer, but he was like, that dude was like, he was one of a kind, like he was a Mason. He was very much in elements of the street. And like I said, he was doing all types of other different aspects that come with it. But he wasn't really home a lot. But I remember being angry, when I went back home and I laid in my bed, I was very upset, at him. And so I think I started to distance myself because I didn't really know what being a crackhead was, but it didn't seem like it was something that you kind of wanted to be associated with. We would start to kind of get closer through, he started bringing me to, he enrolled me with the Mattapan Patriots. Shout out to Mick, shout out to the Patriots.
Shout out to Mick, keep doing your thing.
Accomplishments, but yeah. I started playing for the Mattapan Patriots, and so one day, when he was taking me from practice, he took me to a store, which I would find out later was my Uncle Fruitman's store in Mattapan. It was called Morton Superette. And, he probably was making a move in there. My uncle, I didn't know him at that time, but when I walked in, it was just crazy. Like, he was literally in front of a plate of cocaine. He was doing lines. There was like an assault rifle like next to him. And then I seen my older brother, who I looked up to, but really didn't really get an opportunity to really see because he was inside the store a lot, my brother Buzz. And so, it was just wide open. And my father asked me he was like, step out for a second after I met my uncle, and he looked up from doing lines on the plate and he's like, little nigga, you know who I am? And I'm like, no. And he's like, nigga, I'm your Uncle Fruitman. And I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying? And I really didn't know what to say. I was just taken, aback by all of this interaction. And when I went back outside, probably because, he probably was doing some, lick business with my pops that I couldn't be privy to. When I stepped back outside, a younger kid came in a little bit older than me, who I would realize would be my older cousin at the time. And he was probably about 13, and he had just gold chains. He was fly as hell, and he like came out and he was like, he seen me in my football uniform and he's like, oh, you play football? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, yo, get your football. And I'm like looking at dog, and it was like I'm taking it in because he was like a grown-ass man. And then we start throwing the football. I ran into a fire hydrant. I landed on my back, and I was like looking up because I was just taking all this shit in. Anyways, when I got home that night, I was laying in my bed. I was wide open because, also my uncle, what I failed to mention, he gave me some bread. And I was an opportunity, like I said, to see my brother Buzz. And I knew like, yo, I got to get to the store because, like I said, at that time, as the 90s was starting to take a full swing, as crack came in, it was like I started seeing the formation of different hoods. And this is going to blow a lot of people's minds. Back then, in the 90s, early 90s, it was allegiances. Nigga gangs was clicking up. So it was called Scat G, which was, I believe, St. Joseph, Castlegate Academy, Timberwolves, or Tremont Street. But it could have been the Timberwolves, I believe, and the Giants. And then in my neighborhood, which was Interville, Magnolia, they clicked up with Orchard Park, Corbett, Heat Street, Mission Hill. And so it was like those boundaries were kind of starting to be in play. So when I'm thinking to myself, like I'm wide open, I want to get back to that store, I also was kind of afraid because, older guys from, neighborhoods that really didn't get along with mine was coming in, and they was getting into it with the older guys in my neighborhood, and it was shootings. At first, I thought that the older guys in my neighborhood were like superheroes, but then when I started seeing that people were getting touched just as well as, they was punishing shit, it started making me afraid. And so I'm like, I got to get to that store. But I was afraid to go through all of those neighborhoods that were at odds with mine, so I decided I was going to do it super early. So I literally got up on a Saturday and I walked all the way down, Lawrence Ave. After I left my street, I took a left on Blue Hill, and I just took Blue Hill all the way up through Grove Hall, Humboldt on the right, Castlegate on the left, all the way past Franklin Field, Franklin Hill on the right, Frank the Field on the left, Hansborough, all of these foreign, like, almost at like they were, minor Iraqi cities, what have you.
You needed an Uber back then.
And I walked, till I made it to that store. When I took that left and busted move into that store, it was like, I was open. And, I was really, really young at that time, I was 11 years old. And so, I came in, and first thing my uncle said to me, he's like, looked me up and down, and he's like, what the fuck you got on? You know what I'm saying? And I thought I was fly. I had my little shells on, like a little Adidas suit, but kind of basic compared to probably what they was like wearing. It was a little more flashy. They had the jewelry. And he was like, yo, your brother's out there shining that card out, man. Tell that nigga to go take you to the sneaker store, man. You can't be around me with that shit on. You know what I'm saying? Go get the snakeskin forms. Go get that nigga a leather Adidas jacket. Go get him some. And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's crazy. So now I'm trying to come to the store, and so I'm keeping. I kept coming to the store because it was just too wide open for me. And so I ran into my mother in the store one day, and that was like crazy.